last session of the day. So our final session explores mind, meditation, and multisensorial experience. To moderate this session, we are very delighted to welcome back Professor Jong-Young Kim from Harvard Graduate School of Design. So Professor Kim, please.
Okay, so while people still settling down, I'll just start the session so that we are on time. Good afternoon. As much as I learned it from the morning session, I'm sure all of you were really having great time listening to all the great expertise about world making after Buddhism. So my name is Jong-Young Kim, and I'm so pleased and honored to moderate the last session. So we are living in such a digitalized world. But then because of that, I think the importance of multisensorial bodily dimensions of the built environment will only get amplified. Ironically, maybe helped by digital technologies. So I'm very much looking forward to listening to this session, maybe through my own landscape architecture approach, especially like world making through various medium, but still rooted into spatial experience, which engages embodiment of audiences and aesthetics of intervention in environmental and heritage. So particularly like sound, community, environment, heritage, and memory are all vulnerable objects of care. How do you think about the aesthetics of intervening, of calming a mind, shaping a community, reanimating fragments, or reconstructing a cave, especially when your audience may not be Buddhist at all? So those questions I already kind of have in my mind after reading your abstract of presentation. So I'm just so much looking forward to listen more and learn more. So should I introduce speakers as well? Okay, let me do it, yeah. This is a little bit different format because first presenter will have some equipment to demonstrate, so I'm introducing here now. So first speaker we'll have is Monique Mead. Monique Mead is the Director of Music Entrepreneurship in Carnegie Mellon University. She founded the program and developed a project-based curriculum that empowers musicians to forge innovative pathways in music. Monique is a violinist, educator, and innovator whose career has been defined by reimagining how audiences experience music. She is also a soloist and presenter, so she worked with many of the prestigious orchestra of the world, including Munich Radio Orchestra, Cologne Philharmonic, and Düsseldorf Symphony. Our second presenter will be Professor Quilan Liu. Professor Liu is an associate professor in the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Pittsburgh. Her research focuses on the legal interaction between Buddhism and the state. Her book, Buddhism in Court, Religion, Law, and Jurisdiction in China, was published by Oxford University Press in 2024. She is also the director and editor of the documentary film Young Jigme, screened at many prestigious venues, including 2015 International Jean Rouge Film Festival in Paris, and International Jean Rouge Film Festival in, right, yeah, that's what I already said. International Jean Rouge Film Festival in Paris in 2015. Our third speaker will be Dr. Sonia Lee. Dr. Sonia Lee is a professor of art history, East Asian languages and cultures and religions at the University of Southern California. She is currently department chair of East Asian languages and cultures. Dr. Lee is a specialist in religious art and architecture of China and Central Asia, having published widely on the subject. Her research interests also include the material culture of the ancient Silk Road, art and ecology, Asian art collecting, and heritage conservation. Our last speaker of the day is Professor Xiaozi Shi. Professor Shi is an internationally recognized artist and the Paul L. and Phyllis Radis Professor of Art at Stanford University. She has exhibited extensively in the United States and internationally. His recent solo exhibition include Object of Evidence at the Asia Society Museum in New York City from 2019 to 20, and Eyes On at the Denver Art Museum 2017 to 18. And his work is in the permanent collection of very prestigious institutions such as Baltimore Museum of Art, Denver Art Museum, and Oakland Museum of California. So with that, please welcome our first speaker, Ms. Monique Mead.
We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. For hundreds of years, Buddhists have been practicing meditation as a path to liberation, freedom from the constraints of our conditioned mind, that warped perception that causes suffering. And in theory, the steps of meditation are really very simple. But in practice, at least for me, it often goes more like this. Sit, breathe, mantra. Repeat. Mind on mantra. When thoughts arise, back to mantra. Was I? Try again. Tomorrow. The mind is not easily seduced to stillness. In 1951, a student of D.T. Suzuki visited Harvard's anechoic chamber, expecting to experience absolute silence. And instead, he heard the high-pitched ringing of his nervous system and the low hum of his circulation. This led him to believe that there is no such thing as silence, and wherever there is life, there is sound. What followed was his landmark composition, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, bringing the name John Cage to fame. Thank you for bringing that up yesterday evening. A work composed entirely of rests. 4 minutes and 33 seconds in a concert hall setting is punctuated by coughing, nervous laughter, rustling, and now also the steady scroll of screens to drown out that unbearable silence. So where this piece fails as a concert meditation, it stands as a powerful philosophical statement that questions the very nature and purpose of music. Strongly influenced by the mentorship of Indian musician Gita Sarabhai, Cage adopted the philosophy that the purpose of music is to sober and quiet the mind, thus making it susceptible to divine influences. I stumbled across this quote during the pandemic when I was searching for any way to relieve the distressing levels of anxiety, stress, and depression in our students at Carnegie Mellon University. How then, I asked myself, would you create music that is able to capture the anxious mind and draw it into stillness with no effort beyond listening? So driven by the urgency for relief, I turned to the practices of ancient cultures, to neuroscience, and to music therapy for clues. I purchased a set of quartz singing bowls, instruments that would be easy enough for anyone to play, and I proceeded to develop a sound protocol and also a notation system for it, and then train student practitioners to be able to hold group sound meditations or sound baths at the university every day. So over the past 5 years, we've held hundreds of sound meditations, and in the research we conducted, it showed significant and immediate improvement in mood and stress. So today, I'd like to share the design of this sound protocol with you, just by taking you through a sampling of the soundscapes, inspired by 4 stages of meditation: grounding, focus, bliss, and expansion. Grounding. C. The root, grounded, steady. E. Major tonality, outward, aware. Steady beat, structure, symmetry, safety. A pattern. The beginnings, expectation, rewarded, dopamine. Again, boring. Change. Re-engaged. Rhythmic taps dissolve into wave patterns. attention drifts and is captured again. Steady. Safe. Surrender. Mantra. Heartbeat. Repeating. New sound, re-engaged. D. F. Minor tonality, drawing inward. More space between the mantra. Time dilates. Mantra dissolves. Absorption. I am the sound. Here. Now. Bliss. D. Young. G. Yin. A perfect fifth in perfect balance. G. Young. C. Yin. A chain of fifths emerging. Waves of presence held in harmony. A timeless space. harmonic beats emerging. Three per second, delta, brainwave activation. C, yang. F, yin. Pulsing. The present. Calm, complete, content. Expansion. Pentatonic patterns. Random rhythms suspended in space. Effortless expansion. Gentle awakening, return. Breath expands into movement, and a gentle violin melody would transition back into a relaxed awareness of time. Like many of you, I had the pleasure of touring the Journey to Enlightenment exhibition at CAMLab yesterday. I was wonderfully guided by the insight of Chen Chen. And I was deeply moved by the way these digital experiences were not only able to evoke the wonder of visiting these sites, but also provided an experience of the expanded consciousness embodied by these statues. And as a musician working in a healing capacity, I've always believed that music is a vessel that can hold the suffering of the world and can transform it. And this all came into focus in a whole new way during the immersive tour of the Guanyin Pavilion, where I felt a strong and immediate connection to this Bodhisattva. If you recall, the opening image takes you into the doors of the pavilion where there, 2 stories tall, sits Guanyin, her elongated ears listening to the cries of the world. And then she has this headdress of 1,000 faces to match the images and the likeness of the people who call upon her. And in that, I also heard 1,000 tones that matched the frequency of the cries of these people. Sitting in full embodiment of compassion, she holds space for the suffering of each person, embracing their image in one of the many mirrors housed within her body. And within this healing act of holding space, I could feel dissonance begin to dissolve into harmony, those mirrored images shifting and beginning to unify into one expansive mosaic of the ever-present, ever-unfolding symphony of life. Through the symbolism focused in the Guanyin Pavilion, I saw all the elements of this sound practice come together: listening, holding space, expanding awareness through compassion. Wherever there is life, there is sound, and wherever there is sound, there's potential for transformation. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so thank you, everyone, and we will continue with our session. So I invite our moderator and speakers, the rest of our speakers, back on stage, please. Thank you.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. I wanted to begin by really express my gratitude to Tzu Chi Foundation, Professor CAMLab, especially Professor Eugene Wang, and also Associate Director Li Chen for inviting me to be here and also to be back. This has been a wonderful 3-day session, and I think earlier today we've seen a lot of objects, nature, and now in the afternoon we're slowly moving into the world of sound. And I think in my presentation, we're going to continue with that journey into sound, but more importantly, you will see a lot more people. So I wanted to begin with a little game. So I wanted to invite you to look at these images. So all of these images of paintings and sculpture, they are based on one person in Tibet in the 11th century. So the task for you is very, very simple. I want you to look at them. Can you find something that's the same in every single one of them? Professor Eugene Wang, yes? Oh, yeah, excellent. Exactly. So what's shared in common in all of this is you see this person holding up his right hand and placed behind the right ear. So what is this? And who is this person? So the person that you're looking at, his name is Milarepa, and he was a Tibetan, a Buddhist, a yogin, but also a poet, a composer, and a singer. In fact, for anybody who is interested in studying Tibetan history or religion, Milarepa is actually one of the most influential, the most widely known singers in Tibetan history. His major legacy includes a biography, and through this book we know a lot about his life, but most importantly, he has been hailed as one of the most important singer and composer, and so he had actually left us with a songbook. The songs that he wrote that were compiled in this book is known as gur in Tibetan. So what is gur? In Tibetan Buddhism, this term, gur, is generally referring to religious songs written by Buddhist practitioners, and especially those who spend their time meditating on caves on the mountains. And these songs are often expressions of their spiritual realization, and they are oftentimes transmitted through orally from the composer to the lay and monastic audiences who would come to visit them on the mountains. They have no recorders, no nothing to record it, no telephones to document anything. All they have is a mouse, and then the composer will sing the song, and the audience will learn, and then from there they will spread to the more general audience. So in Tibet, when people sing, especially the folk Tibetan song singers, and especially when they are singing on the mountains, their tradition is they would place their right hand behind the right ears. And I tried to understand, why do they do this? And so one of the explanations that was provided to me is that when you are singing, you can try next time, on a big mountain, when you sing and place your right hand after your right ear, you can sing better, and you can also hear better. So it is for this reason that in the Tibetan artistic tradition, the most classical portraits and and sculptures of this Tibetan 11th century Tibetan yogin Milarepa often features him in a posture with his right hand placed behind his right ear. About a decade ago, when I was still a student here learning from Professor Eugene Wang, I was working on a PhD dissertation looking at the use of music as regulated in the Buddhist monastic law. So this project naturally led me to become interested in tracing, is this still a living tradition? Are people in Tibet still practicing these songs written by Milarepa? So because he was from central Tibet, naturally, I went to central Tibet, traveled to many mountains and communities and into the monasteries of the 4 different traditions within Tibetan Buddhism. But sadly, among the many places that I visited around the time in 2008, the permanence of the Milarepa songs seemed to be a dead tradition. Occasionally, I was able to find 1 or 2 person, lay or monastic, who was able to, sing or chant one or two songs from this songbook. But somehow, after 2 years of search, eventually I turned my attention to a different geographical area in Tibet. I went to northeastern Tibet, and it was there I came to a totally unexpected discovery of a flourishing living tradition in northeastern Tibet, in what is now known in Tibetan as the Amdo region. So the musical tradition that I'm going to tell you more about in the next few minutes was based on my fieldwork in Amdo in northeastern Tibet. After my presentation, if you wanted to know more about the story behind this tradition and see more about the monks and the monasteries and also the communities, I made a movie about this in 2014, and you're welcome to check it out afterwards. So the tradition itself is known as Hornak Mani, and this is an annual Buddhist musical festival that's celebrated by a Tibetan Buddhist monastery and also several local villages affiliated with the monastery in northeastern Tibet. The word, this is Tibetan. So the word mani is an abbreviation of the 6-syllable mantra that is widely known in Tibetan Buddhism, Om Mani Padme Hum. And Hornak is actually referring to a place, and this is known as the Hornak Township in Amdo, in northeastern Tibet. And Hornak is also the place where the participating monastery and the 8 villages are located. So just to give you some idea, where is Hornak? Okay, I'm familiar with the place. So it's about maybe like 3 hours by flight from Beijing, and then you will go to the Kokono Lake, and that's the largest freshwater lake on the Qinghai Tibetan Plateau. And from the Kokono Lake to Hornak, it's about maybe 2 to 3 hours by driving. And so each year during the time of the festival, about 8 villages in the Hornak township, they will get together, and they will also host monks from a local Tibetan Gelugpa monastery and so the Gelugpa monastery is also known as a yellow hat tradition, and if you don't know what that is, the Dalai Lama belongs to that tradition. So all of these villages are located within a few hours of travel by horse or by motorcycle. The festival usually lasts from a few days to a maximum of 2 weeks. And the length of the festival actually was determined by the size of the village. If the village is larger, they were able to support a longer festival. If the village is smaller, then the festival will be cut a little bit shorter. At the festival, the leading monks from this small Tibetan Buddhist monastery in the Gelugpa tradition, they will primarily chant songs from 2 songbooks. So one was a songbook written by Milarepa, I've told you about it earlier, and the other songbook was also a gur book that was composed by another local Tibetan Buddhist monk from the same region, and he was not a yogin, meditating and wandering on the mountain, but instead he was a fully ordained bhikshu in the Gelugpa tradition. So keep this in mind. This is really important. And all the monks who are leading the annual festival, they are from this monastery known as Rongwo Gun Monastery, located in a valley, very beautiful but very remote. And when I was, working there in the summers, around 2010, they have less than 20 monks there. And, during my time there, almost, half of that population was thinking about living monastic life. So here's a picture of some of the monks. And, they don't have this many monks. Only the ones that I've marked with the yellow triangle, they are the ones from the temple, because they were having a joint party with monks from other neighboring monasteries. And so this monk is the head, the abbot of the monastery, and this monk over there, they are the 2 senior teachers, and they are the ones who are training all the new incoming monks, each year. Before the monastery was built, the future founder of the monastery actually used to meditate on a mountain cave, and so here, the monasteries are located on this side. So what I have circled here was actually a little hut, like a cave built on a mountain right across from the valley from the monastery. So the future founder, a Gelugpa monk, used to meditate here. And that's why later on he chose to build a monastery in this location. And just a few words about the founder himself. I don't have a picture or portrait of him. His name was Omo Lozang Chuzha Jiangzuo. So Omo is referring to the name of the village where he was born. He was a local. And following his teacher's instructions, in 1723, he returned. He went to Lhasa, and studied with many teachers in central Tibet. And eventually in 1723, he came back home to Amdo. And in 1730, he founded the monastery that is now known as Rongwo Gun Monastery. And then 10 years later, he founded the Hornak Mani annual chanting tradition. So during the festival itself, usually this is what's going to happen. The hosting village, there are 8 of them. Each one of the village, they will pitch a very beautiful tent. And each village will have assigned to them anywhere between 1 to 3 monks as the chanting leader from the monastery. The monks will be seated in the center of the tent where traditional Tibetan scroll paintings of religious figures will be displayed. All villagers, young and old, men and women, they are required to attend the festival. And for each line in the 2 songbooks, the monk leader will choose one melody from a list of 18 different melodies. And this is totally up to them which melody they wanted to use. And all monks in this monastery are trained to master the 18 different melodies. So even if you're not gifted for music, you have to learn and become a chanting leader. So when the monk leader finishes a stanza, and then they will pause, and then the villagers who are present, they will join, and they will use a melody that's corresponding to the melody that was used by the monk, and they will chant only the 6-syllable mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. So the monks has access to 2 songbooks, but the villagers, they will only use Om Mani Padme Hum. They will also, they will only chant these 6 syllables over and over again. And the goal of this entire festival in these 8 villages is to finish the entire songbook by the end of the festival. So just to give you some idea, I wanted to show you a sample. So the sample were a collection of all the 18 different melodies that I recorded indoor because the Qinghai provincial radio station, they were doing some similar work. I took advantage of that. So the leading chanting monk that you will hear from is called, his name is Monk Yapei. He's one of the senior teachers who trains the other monks. So what I'm going to do is this. The example that I decided to show you, its Tibetan name is Kegu Tongwo. Tongwo means short, and Gu means to sing, to chant, and Ke means singular, alone. So basically, this is like one of the 18 melodies. So what does it look like? Let's see, can we get sound? This is just one of the melody, and they will just continue to chant through the entire songbook. But then after this, the next part is for the villagers who are present to join. So let's see another sample. And their only lyrics are Om Mani Padme Hum. Okay, so they would just continue and to do this for anywhere between 7 days to 2 weeks. It can be a little exhausting, I have to admit, at the end of it. Okay, they will continue, and for almost 3 centuries, these monks in this very small Tibetan Buddhist monastery and the lay Buddhist practitioners in the surrounding 8 villages managed to keep this annual tradition alive. But for both of them, this annual gathering is more than just a religious celebration. The annual festival creates different communities in multiple contexts. Locally, it connects one Tibetan Buddhist monastery with the 8 villages for mutual support. The village relied on the monks to stay engaged with Buddhist practices. The monks and the monastery also relied on the villages through this festival because the gifts from the hosting villages at the end of the celebration would be, sent back to the monastery for communal distribution, and these gifts are going to support the monks' life in the next few months. So one of the feature gifts, this is one of my favorite. So one of the important gifts from the hosting village is a local bread, and this is known as gore. They are gigantic, they are like this big. So each day, each household in the village is committed to provide anywhere between 1 to 3, depending on how much you can afford. They're going to send, bread to the monk's tent. And at the end of the festival, the monastery's monks would be collecting several hundreds of this bread, and therefore they can be sold very expensively in the local market. So all this bread will be delivered to the monastery by trucks from the village. Back at the monastery, each monk will receive a share, and the monks usually keep some of these breads as a staple food in the next few weeks or even months, and those that they cannot consume before they go bad will either be sent home to their biological parents, or they're going to sell them in the local market town. I actually, helped them, selling those breads in the market in Tongren, in Amdo. So more broadly, this annual celebration also connects Tibetan communities in northeastern and central Tibet. The Buddhist religious songs of the central Tibetan yogin, Milarepa, it died out in central Tibet, but it was miraculously preserved far away from its birthplace. More importantly, in the Buddhist context, this Tibetan practice of using music making to connect and build a community was both innovative, that's for that part we need to celebrate, but it was also controversial. This is what I spent 10 years trying to figure out. Why is it controversial? This kind of community building is controversial because for practicing Buddhist, the Buddhist monastic law prohibits the use of most forms of performing arts, including dance, the use of instrumental music, and also certain forms of vocal music. And what you are looking at next is my analytical interpretation of vocal music. These are not, the categories that you will find in the Buddhist text. So according to my own work, my research, among the 3 forms of vocal music, singing is usually defined as the use of simple tunes to perform lyrics with secular themes. So let's see, K-pop Demon, Pink and Black, and they fall into this category. And recitation is the performance of religious lyrics with simple tunes. So for example, when Buddhists are chanting the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, that's recitation. And chanting is the performance of religious lyrics with more complex tunes. And the Gur tradition that I'm talking about today, I think falls into the category of chanting. So specifically, all kinds of singing is prohibited. Recitation of religious text is always permitted, and for in terms of chanting, if you are using embellished tones to perform religious texts in order to please the Buddhist or the non-Buddhist deities, this is okay, you can do that. But the use of chanting to preach about Buddhism or to recite the Buddhist pratimoksha rules, the Buddhist monastic rules for ordained monks and nuns. These 2 uses are strictly prohibited. So therefore, in the context of Hornak Mani, this musical tradition in Amdo, the musical performance of the Gur sons of spiritual realization, it's so important for community building that they were willing to take the risk of breaking Buddhist monastic regulations on the use of vocal music. And this is especially so for the ordained Gelugpa Buddhist monk Garan Jamso, because he was a fully ordained Gelong, and for him, the use of music is absolutely prohibited. So in conclusion, what I have presented is, I believe, a very unique Buddhist musical tradition that challenges the traditional understanding of Buddhist word-making within the walls of the monastic institutions. It is unique because it is unique for a number of reasons. In the broader Buddhist context, using musical performance to practice Buddhism is a unique innovation that you don't normally see in other Buddhist traditions. I think some of you might challenge me by saying, I know there's a Buddhist monk in Japan, and he was a rock star, and he he performed, he rock rode Diamond Sutra, and then we also have wonderful Buddhist nuns in Korea, and they rapped Diamond Sutra as well. But those are isolated cases. What we are seeing here, is an institutional effort aiming at preserving a Buddhist musical tradition. And this is a tradition that has been kept alive by a small Buddhist monastery in Amdo in northeastern Tibet, uninterruptedly for 300 years, with its root dating back to the 11th century, to at least the time of Milarepa. And it is also unique, I think, this celebration, as you can see from the example, it is extremely interactive and participatory. Because in preserving this tradition, the monk leaders from the temple and the villagers, they are equally important. But I have to tell you, as a side note, I think, during my time there over 10 years ago, there was a lot of challenge. One of the challenge was related to the caterpillar fungus. How many of you know about that? This is like a magical Asian cure to all kinds of disease, right? So this tradition met with some challenges because usually, the full name of this festival is known as Hornak Ngawe Mani. It's the Mani festival in the 5th month in the Tibetan calendar. Somehow, the harvest of the caterpillar sometimes may overlap with the dates for this festival. So sometimes the opening of the Hornak Mani festival needs to be delayed so that people can finish, digging for caterpillar fungus, and after that they can return to the village to participate. Socially, it is also a tradition that blends religious ideas, literary composition, performing arts, and even the economics of the Buddhist communities. And in so doing, the Hornak Mani tradition preserves a fascinating Buddhist world. Spatially, It expands the local community in the Hornak Township into a much larger network of Buddhist music making on the greater Qinghai Tibetan Plateau. Temporarily, this annual festival managed to keep a millennium-old Buddhist musical practice that had historically flourished but later disappeared in central Tibet. And I hope someday, especially in connection with the wonderful exhibitions that we are doing in the CAMLab, I hope that someday in the future, we will be able to digitally reconstruct this fascinating world to virtually transport people far away from it to interact and experience with this world that has become increasingly difficult to access for outsiders. Thank you so much for your attention.
Well, before I begin, I'd just like to express my deep gratitude to Dr. He, all the Chizi volunteers, and also to Yujin Wang and CAMLab for hosting this really wonderful and very productive conference. And I'm especially grateful for bringing all of us together. As some of you know, I'm an art historian by training, and I'm so honored to be part of this really 3-day-long conversation that I learned so much about so many different disciplines, so many new researchers, and so many new experiences. And for today, I'm also like to talk a bit about transporting you to another place, though not as miraculous as some of the other presenters in my panel that just have done. So what I'm talking about is Buddhist caves and also Buddhist monuments in general. And the means of doing that is through copies, replication. And the way that I frame my research is really try to do it through one of the signature missions in the Chizi Foundation, namely the recycling program. So in this paper, I will try to show that the Chizi Foundation recycling campaign can also serve as a generative source to really think with other fields, especially in developing new ideas and new approaches. So what I have in mind is to try to bring the two in dialogue, bring the recycling program in dialogue with the preservation and dissemination of pre-modern religious material culture, which is the focus of my research. So as many of you know, these two are very different domains of activities and discourses. But what's really interesting, what's really in common is that both of them are concerned with material objects that are no longer retaining their original function, and also ways to make these objects useful and meaningful again. So my discussion is a comparative one, and trying to put the two together so that you see how the two people involved in these two different domains engage in repurposing and also making meanings in the process. And I hope that through this comparative analysis that we get to new insights and also beneficial to both sides. So today I will be using wall painting fragments from Buddhist monuments along the ancient Silk Road as a case study. So I will first just talk very briefly about the Chizi approach to environmental issues. And then I will be talking about a set of actual copies of these paintings as a way to connect the two. And I will argue that heritage objects can be animated and made useful in ways similar to the way Chizi volunteers have learned to perceive and engage with discarded materials such as plastic bottles and paper waste. And so it's not going to be a one-to-one comparison, because what you see in heritage conservation, which is actually a really great way of thinking about conservation in a more sustainable ways, is using replication in terms of material and digital forms. And this is also a way to fulfill some of the fundamental goals in modern heritage conservation, which is really about boosting knowledge dissemination, viewer engagement, and participation. So that's what I will be talking about today. So this is a photograph showing you that seminal moment when Master Zheng Yan, the founder of Qi Foundation, a spiritual leader still today, gave a speech about joining the local government's recycling efforts to reduce waste and also to make Taiwan a beautiful island. And so this is really the beginning of Qi's foray into environmental mission around the world. And as some of you know, this is actually a later addition to some of Qi's signature missions. So it started out as a charity and poverty relief along the east coast of Taiwan. And now it's becoming one of the largest NGOs around the world. And I will just focus primarily on the environmental vision. And I would like to acknowledge the works that's been done by fellow colleagues here, like Mayfair Yang and then Weishan Huang. And I also like to thank Liu Yining for giving a really wonderful introduction to Qi's effort in environmentalism yesterday. So I'm not going to repeat what she said, but I will just focus primarily on 2 points that's related to Master Zheng Yan's teaching about the environment. So the first point concerns the centrality of the earth to the spiritual journey of all Buddhists. So as the Master explains, the path to enlightenment is to exercise compassion and follow the Buddha's example. And then through this course, one will eventually discover one's own Buddha nature. So that's very well known to followers of Qi and also many Buddhists. Now for human practitioners, so what's really unique is that Master Zheng Yan emphasizes that the earth is the only realm in the entire cosmos, including Buddhists, in which one can achieve this goal. So that means that if we mess up the earth, we mess up our chance of attaining enlightenment. So that's why it's really important that we keep the world functioning, following its natural path, and also doing this, it will also make it possible for others to embark on the same journey toward enlightenment. And so in this way, Master Zheng Yan is linking self-cultivation to environmental action. And so this is really becoming a very powerful spiritual foundation for environmental ethics. So what kind of efforts and actions that can Buddhists take to save the earth while pursuing their spiritual goal? Well, the Qi response is really the second point I want to make. So I will stress again one of Master Zheng Yan's teaching, which is really to treat manufactured products as living things with compassion. So this is, when you put it within the context of history of Buddhism and also environmental ethics, this is actually quite unique and really powerful because, for a very long time, Buddhist thinkers over the centuries have considered different sentient beings, plants as sentient beings, but not man-made objects. And so this is actually very unique. And so, and the reason for this is that once you start to treat objects made by people with compassion, that will compel them to extend these objects' lifetime and also reanimate them so that they become useful again. So the recycling program that Qi champions was designed to maximize the usefulness of materials of all sorts, and they call it through the 5 R's. So through this program of actions that they call the 5 R's, so to refuse, to reduce, to remake, to repair, and to recycle. And everyone is encouraged to put all these lessons into practice, both at home and also through community events and also community centers like recycling centers that she set up throughout Taiwan and also around the world. And those people involved in this green mission are often known as the eco or the environmental bodhisattvas. And Yining talked quite a bit about that yesterday. Now, the frugal lifestyle that Master Zheng Yan advocates to deal with a host of environmental challenges today have led some of her followers to adopt a rather hardline form of nature conservancy. In fact, some CZ members believe that the use of natural resources for monumental projects such as building stupas, temples, is considered wasteful and wrong-headed, because the construction of this kind would deplete local forests, increase the negative impact of deforestation. But as an art historian, as you probably can guess what I'm going to say, I would strongly disagree with this approach, way of thinking about natural resources. And to the contrary, the long history of Buddhist material culture has proven that a lot of these undertakings cannot be interpreted simply as a product of wasteful lifestyle that will endanger the world. On the contrary, Buddhist devotion to objects and monuments have much to contribute to making the planet more conducive for self-cultivation. So for the present study, I will focus on the legacy of Buddhist material culture today through the preservation and display of wall paintings from ancient sites and along the Silk Road in particular, and drawing on the lessons from the Qizi recycling program, I will argue that the use of replicas is critical to reanimating heritage objects, making them a powerful tool in education. So it's not exactly about saving the world directly, but actually through education. And that also coincides with another signature missions of the Xi Foundation. So I show you some of the pictures of the volunteers involved in the recyclings. Now let's switch gear a little bit. So I will be talking a lot about making copies of wall paintings, and as a way to focus my discussion, I'll be using examples that were exhibited at this museum in Beijing called the Beijing Minsheng Art Museum. The exhibition is specifically known as the Echoes of Camel Bows, Art Civilizations Along the Silk Road, which was at the Minsheng Museum is about 2 years ago. And on the screen, it's sort of showing you the floor plan of this very grand exhibition that featured over 500 objects, and that would include many authentic copies, authentic fragments of wall paintings, as well as copies. So most of the, let me use a pointer. So the exhibition will start from the entrance and go up. And a lot of the authentic objects actually located in the first two sections. And then the copies started to show up across. And then actually, since I'm at Harvard, so I just want to also mention that this exhibition included another project that CAMLab did, and it's showcased in the third floor. Let me show you. And so these are some of the objects that they borrowed from China and exhibited. So that included quite a variety. So you have, I think it's probably like some furniture in temples that actually carve up objects, and then shoes. And then these are the authentic wall fragments that came from different sites along the ancient Silk Road. So these came from the region Kucha. And then this one came from Khotan, but oops. Let's see. Okay, so along the way, you also begin to see these copies. And because we are dealing with copies actually made on paper, and a lot of them are actually mounted in front of light boxes. And I think some of them are also not exhibited in this way, but actually have light projected on them. So the point I want to make, if you compare the two, wrong way. So these are the authentic objects, and they are also often displayed in vitrines like these. And the copies are also given a really similar type of treatment in the display. So these are actually fairly large, as you can tell by the museum goers in these photos. And this one is, in fact, is actually quite large, so the size of almost this wall. And then there are also smaller ones. And what's really interesting is that even though they are so-called copies, they are actually given authorship. So the artist who did the copy was actually named. So for example, this one came from Mogao Kings of Dunhuang, and it was done by a recently retired artist at the Academy, Lo Jie. And then this one came from Kucha and the site of Komtura. And this artist, Guo Feng, actually has been working at the site for many long times, and it features quite a number of his works. So you can see that they were actually given this kind of treatment like artwork themselves. Now, a second type of copies being exhibited at this exhibition were mounted in what's called a replica cave. And there are actually several of them exhibited at this show. So the one kind is this example, which is also from Dunhuang, and it's at the site of Yulin and 29. That's okay. And when you walk inside, all the copies are actually done one-to-one scale and mounted on a wooden armature to resemble what the interior of the cave looks like. And I just want you to keep in mind that this is not plaster wall, but in fact it's paper. So all the images were being copied faithfully, showing what's actually on the wall, and put together like this. And then here's a view of the main wall where you see the images inside. And if you zoom in, and they were actually really well done copies of the original wall paintings. So that's one kind. And another kind of replica cave is this one, which actually was done in association with the Asian Art Museum of Berlin. And here is the entrance into the structure. And then this is just a diagram showing you the cave structure. So the entrance is on this side, so you walk in, and then the front part of it has this kind of barrel boat layout, and then there's a smaller back chamber connected by two corridors. Now, what's really unique about this particular one is that it's all done on 3D, just digital printed copies. So unlike the other ones that's actually carefully done by hand, by artists, and assembled together. So the cave is still assembled similarly, but the painting is just printed on paper and mounted on the structure. And so this is sort of giving you a scale. And in this particular example, if you pay attention to comparison on two sides, so this is black and white, and this is in color. So what it means is that this is actually a part of the painting that no longer exists, and the fragment was actually destroyed at the end of World War II. Whereas in this case, a lot of the paintings, the paintings are actually located in the Asian Art Museum Berlin. And if you visit the site at Kiziu today, there are a lot of holes on the wall. So what this replica cave is doing is both a reconstruction and also replication. And so it sort of gives you an idea what the original structure must have been like. So here's some more pictures from that. Okay, so now I have these two examples showing two different kinds of copies. So how do we make sense of them? And also to link it to the CG efforts in environmental action. So the way for me to link it is really this idea of attempt to reanimate objects in these two domains. And for the copies, I would like to go back to a very important text that many of us know about in art history, and that's Walter Benjamin's important essay, Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, from 1936. And for those of you who are not familiar, so just let me recap very briefly the relevant part of Benjamin's argument. So in this essay, he's basically talking about the relatively new phenomenon in this time of all this new technologies in mechanical reproduction. So photography and lithography and also film. So what's really exciting in Benjamin's mind is that through replication, art objects is being reactivated because everybody gets to engage with the artwork being reproduced in their own setting. So you don't need to go to a museum to engage with art because you can just open the book and here we have it. And so this is actually really a really important moment in Benjamin's mind because it allows the artwork to, or he uses the word liberation, to liberate the artwork from the rarefied singularity in time and space, or commonly known as aura, that you don't need to go see a artwork because it's somehow in its present, you somehow behave in a slightly different way. And instead, the artwork comes to you. But then the downside for him is that because you'll be flooded with all these replications in your everyday life, that you become distracted and even absent-minded. Okay, so keep these couple points in mind. So now we try to put the two together. So when we exhibit copies of Buddhist wall paintings, both in the handmade and the digital printed forms, present us with a very unique scenario to think about Benjamin's argument in a different way, because the audience is actually quite different. So as a way to sort of make it concrete for you, I could imagine putting CG volunteers in this exhibition and see what they will think about it. So this is just I have not done the proper ethnography to do that because the exhibition passed and no CG volunteer ever show up, so I just do it in my head, imagining what they might have thought about this exhibition. Okay, so so a couple points. So they probably like the idea that it's a pretty cost-effective, sustainable way of mounting a large-scale exhibition because you're not borrowing objects, and it does save you a lot of money in doing exhibition. And it also fulfills the purpose of education. And then another point that I will also want to point out is that the experience of walking into these replica caves, for example, might remind them of taking part in sorting garbage or disposables, so that they actually derive satisfaction from turning discarded objects into something useful, just like the way we walk in these replica caves, and that we actually engage with them, and in doing so, we are learning, and through the process of learning, we make them alive again. And so it's really through participation that really makes a big difference. And then I also want to highlight the fact that these CG volunteers come to the exhibition with a spiritual goal in mind. So they are not distracted. In fact, they are motivated to really try to make things better. And then what it tells us is that the relationship that they bear when coming into the exhibition is really not just about aesthetic appreciation, cultural understanding, and also about self-motivation and ethical living. So I know I'm almost out of time, so I just want to emphasize that in this comparison, it's not my intention to cast the CG volunteers as the model viewing audience of Buddhist art and material culture in the museum. But I think curatorial and conservation professionals actually have a lot to learn by trying to understand the world from their perspectives so that they can actually tap into the potential of social engagement through the display of historical objects. Using replicas actually really can lead to some really meaningful way of achieving this goal. And when properly designed and communicated, replicas can be a powerful tool to educate the public about the past as much as about the present. And also, if we sort of flip this side around and what's all these replicas can do for the CG volunteers or the CG members, I would actually strongly urge them to sort of take this even further, that when they return home from the exhibition, they can actually teach the lesson they learned from the exhibition to the people at home and also in their community. So in this way, they can actually expand Shizi's educational mission by incorporating the heritage of Buddhist material culture around the world into everyday practice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your patience to stay through this last presentation. I would like to start by saying that I'm an artist, a practitioner, not an art historian or scholar. And here at Harvard, we have Professor Eugene Wang, an art historian who sets out to make these complex multimedia immersive installations with such scholarly rigor. And I myself, as an artist, in recent years have taken a different direction, that is to look into history, which include art history, and now recently Buddhism for inspiration, and try to make works that are hopefully different. So I will start introducing my one single project from my over 30 years of art practice. So this is a project that I started in 2017 and still ongoing. It is a project focusing on the Dunhuang Library Cave. So we have to go back to year 2017 when I received an invitation from the Dunhuang Foundation in the US in the spring to be the first artist in their new artist in residency program. I was very excited and I feel deeply humbled. You know, Dunhuang has been a place of pilgrimage for generations of artists since the beginning of the 20th century. We know people like Zhang Daqian, Chang Shuhong, Duan Wenjie. They all left such a important artistic, impressive legacy at Dunhuang. So how could I find a different path and unfold different types of works? And Dunhuang, such a big name, has iconic historical and cultural status and rich artistic heritage, which could be a bit formidable for me, knowing little about Dunhuang studies. How can I balance my sincere respect with creative freedom? So in the summer of 2017, I stayed for nearly 1 month at the Dunhuang Academy's guest house. It's called Mogao Sanzhuang. Every morning, I would walk about 10 minutes north to Dunhuang Academy, spend the first few days reading and developing ideas, and then began working in a temporary studio provided by the academy. So this is, it's so dark. At night, this is a view from the window of my guest room. I can see in faint light the rows of caves in the northern section, which are the places ancient monks had practiced and lived, and many of them died there as well. It was a sight to remember for a lifetime. I had a simple, peaceful, secluded, and fulfilling life experience to be cherished. I had been researching, learning, and thinking about Dunhuang in the months leading up to my residency. Many ideas floating in my mind. I put down different notes and sketches in my sketchbook, but somehow they always came back to Cave 17, the library cave. So during my residency, I started a research-based project called Ember of History, reimagining the library cave at Dunhuang. For those familiar with the story of the library cave, I don't have to repeat the story. Basically, it was a small grotto discovered in 1900, and in the following years, over 70,000 cultural relics, including most of them Buddhist sutras, were dispersed. They were, bought, really robbed away, have been dispersed all over the world. So this is a picture from 1907 taken by Oriel Stein, the first foreign explorer to visit the cave and took away relics. This is how it looks like today. In this 1908 photograph of the French sinologist Paul Pelliot, huddled in the dimly lit cave and sorting through scrolls in front of a mountain of materials along the wall, linger in my mind like a ghost. It is such a dense, gloomy, and haunting image. To me, this scene from over 100 years ago seems as if it is from yesterday. And so this is on September the 5th, 2017, when I was fortunate enough to be granted a very rare permit from the Academy to physically enter the cave with a photographer. I feel like I was an amateur archaeologist, and I was thinking that how could I blend archaeological analysis and scholarship with poetic imagination in my artwork. So this became the starting point for me. Thanks to the 3D data generously provided by the Academy, I eventually came up with the idea transforming this internal space of the cave, the void, right, or emptiness, if you would, into a solid volume. This is my first model using 3D printing. It's empty inside. Then I perceive this volume as an ember that seems to preserve some genes of Chinese culture. So my art project, Ember of History, centers on the troubled history and encyclopedic content of the library cave. I make this long scroll in brush and ink. Everything is made by hand with brush. It brings together notes, diagrams, calligraphy, architecture, concept drawings, as well as quoted images from artifacts from the cave. It truthfully documents a process of study, contemplation, imagination, and conceptualization. So the long scroll adopts the Dunhuang manuscript in form, in its format, which is a long scroll, and in itself is an independent work that eventually led to the realization of a series of paintings, sculptures, and installations. In the meantime, I was making many small ink sketches to quickly record the source materials that I encountered in my research, my initial understanding and thoughts and ideas that came to me. So those brown paper, what we call 毛边纸, a chip paper used to practice calligraphy is what I did the sketches on. So first, this is a very unusual project for me. I did not know what I was going to do except with a vague and very abstract idea. So I set up a conceptual framework. I treated the library cave, which had been sealed for nearly 9 centuries, as ember of history, strata of memories, and time capsule. So based on architectural diagrams, I transformed the vacant internal space into a physical entity to explore the relationship between fullness and the void, aggregation, accumulation, and absence. And this becomes a recurring basic unit, a theater or stage, as you might call, in which to project my various imaginations, unfolding a series of themes in different sections. First, according to the book by Oriel Stein, Serendia, and a few photographs taken by Stein and Pelliot, I rendered the section 浩繁精致, vast volumes of sutras with traditional linear drawing and ink and wash, to restore the original state of the cave. I came up with this floor plan and a section to imagine how these bundles of scrolls have been piled up against the end wall, layer after layer, and then to the 2 walls on the sides, right? Eventually occupying the space to make the maximum use of the space. The second section, tangible materials, is based on Stein's categorization and scale estimation of the materials in the cave. There's paper, silk, linen, and I imagine all these materials that all sort of dissolve and melt down and are deposited in a horizontal layers like geological strata and those wooden dowels that did not dissolve or float inside. Learn of words adopted a deconstructive technique or strategy, selecting keywords that appear repeatedly in canonical Buddhist sutras, freeing them from the constraints of the surface of their material, and they allowing them to float and disperse and accumulate freely in the space of the cave. And so this became an opportunity for me to practice calligraphy, which I love. And besides they are in different sizes, I had to tilt and distort some of them in perspective so that they float in space. And they become denser and denser. These are random words, however, words related to the worldly desires and sufferings and anxieties which sink and gather at the bottom, becoming very dense. Toward the top, there are words pointing to enlightenment, liberation, or salvation, or emptiness. They ascend to the top, they become more sparse. So this visually conveys the essential meaning of Buddhism for me. So in this case, calligraphy and drawing is my kind of upaya, you may say. So the writing of this text is faithful to the calligraphy style of the original scrolls, ranging from Northern Dynasty script, which preserves the aesthetics of clerical script, Li Shu, then into the square Sui and Tang Dynasty smaller regular script, Xiao Kai. So it partially reflects the evolution of Chinese calligraphy. I subsequently studied the Tang Dynasty painting, 3 realms and 9 levels diagram, 三界九地之图, and read textual expositions, the Abhidhamma Koma Bhasia, on Buddhist views of the cosmos. So this is the original painting. It's almost 2 meters long, a hanging scroll. Then I made this illustration just to help myself understand the structure and the layers of Buddhist cosmology. Some from the bottom up, this void, the wheel of wind, of water, of gold, the hell, 9 mountains and 8 seas or 8 oceans, Mount Sumeru, with the sun and the moon and the 28 levels of heavenly realms, leading toward what I see as enlightenment, salvation, and emptiness from the earthly world. So from here, I started to conceive a 3D model placed within the library cave to resonate with the phrase, 一窟之中宛然三界. Being in a Buddhist cave is like being in 3 realms, in the cosmos. In other words, a Buddhist cave offers a complete model of the world. It is a miniature of the world. This is the first version with a more figurative style incorporating elements of traditional Chinese painting. And the banners that are fluttering above the top comes from Bodhisattva as Guide of Souls, Tang Dynasty painting from the British Museum collection. So starting from a more figurative style, I further simplify it into a 3-dimensional abstract composition of geometric shapes in which a series of spheres representing the 28 heavenly levels, 28天, intersect, intersect the inner walls of the cave, forming layers of arcs that resemble almost like a magnetic field with complex and rigorous structure, kind of like when you cut into an onion, you get these layers of curved lines, right? So these are snapshots taken on September the 10th, the day before I left my residency in the summer. So these are unfinished work. So in my ink paintings, I imagine 3-dimensional forms, either sculpture or installations. And so eventually I was able to realize some of these works. This is first experiment in 2019 in Guangdong that I did this test using a scaled-down model with 3D printing and hand manual adjustment, and then make a plastic mold based on that model. And I cut these Buddhist sutra characters out from a sheet of film and cast inside the amber-colored resin. They are poured in layers into the mold, placed upside down. So this is how the sculpture looks like when you walk around it, right? You can see these characters kind of floating in amber like insects. Then in the next 3 years, I carry out more tests, and I started to make digital studies to design my sculptures. This one has to do with the typical color combinations found in the paintings on silk from the cave. You can call this perhaps a strata of art history, perhaps. So in the spring of 2023, post-COVID, I was able to return to Guangdong to do more work. And this is how the sculpture looks like, illuminated from a lamp placed inside a pedestal. This one has high saturation colors. This one has low saturation colors, which seems like, you know, how paintings would look like that when they aged over the years. Then for the tangible materials, we actually used silk and paper pulp and linen and wood, you know, and ink and gold, you know, gold powder to represent different materials found in the cave. And with these wooden dolls, which don't dissolve, to represented by wooden sticks. So it's kind of like a fruit jelly with little bits of peanut. And that's how it looks like, you know, in a darker space with light coming from above, from below, inside. This is how the sculptures look like when they are arranged into a mandala-like configuration. So from Shenzhen, I collaborated with the museum director, Mr. Liu Xiaodu, who is an architect. So we worked together to figure out this mandala-like you know, configuration. And this is my sculpture, which was the only contemporary work juxtaposed in relics, with relics from the library cave that is in the British Library collection. So anyway, the next section is about my work inspired by the Dunhuang star chart, a very famous scroll, important in the history of Chinese astronomy. I probably have to skip it because it's a little... Okay, let's take a look at this. The Dunhuang star chart consists of 13 flat star charts and corresponding texture and notations. Together, they documented over 1,300 stars that is amazingly complete and accurate. So the 12 flat star maps, each one of them is a document of observation of, say, a portion of the sky, right? Spanning east to west, 30 degrees, and then south to north, 80 degrees. That's a piece of the sky, and it's observed and then documented in one map. So my job, so this is how I try to understand how the star maps are observed and made by this drawing. Again, drawing becomes my way to visualize and to understand. So the 13th section is a star chart of the circumpolar, you know, what you can see year round above. And this is so 12 slices of a melon plus a cap. That's how I understand it. So then according to the order of the 12th month and the spatial relationship, I combine the 13 star maps into a circular form and then bend it to become a hemisphere of, you know, constellations. So the different orientations, different orders of the dome, which I'm not getting into since I run out of time. These are my quick sketches. And my idea was to use the starry sky as a dome to cover the earth in accordance with the idea of 天圆地方. Heaven is round, the earth is flat. And let the clouds float in between. So these are some of the relics I quoted from. And this is 2019 in my Stanford studio. The celestial heaven, which is the dome with constellations, is either contained within the library cave or covers it externally. And together, they form a model of the world. So in this version, actually, it is contained and covers the Tang Dynasty capital city of Chang'an. Okay, in a second version, the dome circumvents the library cave, covering the 12 ancient states whose names are mostly drawn from Spring, Autumn, and Warring States period, 春秋战国. So this is a model for the ancients to use astrology, use cloud divination, and the interpretation of celestial phenomena, to use them as a combined system, 三位一体, to predict the future and judge good and bad omens. So I try to create a holistic model to represent this unique cultural phenomenon and belief knowledge system of ancient China. So eventually then it leads to our anxiety in modern times, living in the shadow of nuclear wars. So the last section brings us back to the reality. Okay, this is my installation called Starry Sky from 2023, based on that photo that I talked about. But this photographic image painted in a large hanging scroll, it is an expanded and imagined complete view of the cave, as if the walls were taken away, right, exposed everything inside. It is not a photo, it's actually acrylic painting by hand. And so on the top you see these constellations they are talked about. Punctuating over the scrolls is a grid of Dao heads, knobs and Dao heads that become like the painted representation of the scrolls become real, entering the viewer's space. So I'm going to go just quickly through these. Another section that is inspired by mandalas. Okay. So these are early mandalas found in the library cave, and then so I read quite a bit about the meaning and the structure of mandala. Mandala represents the Dharma, microcosm of the universe, an image of the mind, and a symbol of spirituality. So I use this one. It is 请观世音菩萨咒曼陀罗. It's one in the BNF collection, and I try to construct it into a three-dimensional form by referencing later three-dimensional mandalas. For example, this wood-carved mandala from Qing Dynasty found in the Qinghai Provincial Museum, which last year I got a chance to see. So these are some more quick sketches in preparation for the more formal finished drawings for the scroll. So this is important, I need to go through this. I synthesized or integrated these materials to envision and reconstruct the three-dimensionality embodied in the 2D diagrams, the paintings, and speculate on the spatial form of early three-dimensional mandalas. And I placed the model inside the library cave again, which forms an organic whole with the cave's architecture. And the cave's ceiling become the roof of the entire mandala. Following this, I extracted almost all the recognizable figures and symbols and used only simple geometric shapes such as squares, circles, equilateral triangles as the main elements to construct layers of three-dimensional abstract patterns inside the cave, whose spatial forms imply mathematical relationships and suggest the abstract laws or structures of the world. So this is the last section that compares the Sanjie Jiudi, the Buddhist cosmology of 3 realms and 9 levels with mandala, and to combine them in the whole a holistic kind of configuration. So anyway, let's look at these 15 sections in 11 themes. Vast volumes of sutras, number 1. Tangible materials, land of language or languages. Sanjie Jiudi, 3 realms and 9 levels. So, Dunhuang, starry sky. Sometimes, a theme could have more than 1 section. Each section is 2.5 meters long. Radiant colors, that explores the abstract color combination of artworks found in the cave. Dispersed treasures, the ruins of memory, fossils of languages, and the last theme, reconstructing mandala. Okay, so the culminating piece is this 3D video projection mapping, which is projected onto a 1-to-1 model, 3-dimensional model of library cave. I make this video work in collaboration with artist Chen Zihao, Wang Kai, and music composer Ma Shihua. Here I'm giving them thanks and credits. So as opposed to more immersive kind of experience, here everything's contained within the cave, which we view from outside. And I'm also taking a non-realistic approach. It's more, abstract and geometric. This is the 28 heavenly levels and the constellations. So here I was inspired by the idea of 三千大千世界. You know, 三界九地 is a unit of the universe, right? It's multiplied by 3,000. So then it becomes infinity of the universe. Okay, one last picture is installation view at the 16th century hall in Beijing, 地坛公园 Altar of Earth Park. I would like to give my thanks here to the Tzu Chi Foundation, Dr. He, and the Harvard CAMLab, Professor Eugene Wang, Lulu Liu, Lu Chen Chen, and their wonderful team. You know, so many names that I learned. Great people to meet. Thank you so much for your patience. Please forgive me.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed, and of course, I'm sure audience as well, such an illuminating ideation and also realization of such a thought and idea. I was actually informed that we had to finish the last panel by 3:35, which is already 8 minutes past. But I was also told that we can have like 10-minute Q&A. I would love to have a conversation, but I really like to open up the question to audience because the panel 2, I really enjoyed listening from audience. So, please.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentations. It's been a lovely afternoon. My name is Anne Feng. I teach Chinese art at Boston University. I have one question for Professor Li and then one question for Professor Xie. Professor Li, you mentioned the Benjaminian idea about the original and the replica, and I was wondering if we could also tie this back to Buddhist relationship with printing and replication, since as Buddhism is an important force of early sutra printing and print in general, and I'm wondering, could we think about replication through a Buddhist lens? And then for Professor Xie, I'm wondering which kind of embodied experience of being at Dunhuang kind of haunts you when you're kind of working with this project and grappling this project, like the lighting, the sound, the moisture, the coldness of being in Dunhuang. Thank you.
My apologies, but could we keep the answers quite brief so that we can have another questions from audience? Thank you.
Okay, I'll be very, very brief. And I think the idea of replication is so central to Buddhist material culture from the very beginning. I didn't have time to talk about this today, but I think it adds to my argument for having more of these replicas in museums. I think that's actually a trend started by the Dunhuang Academy when they did the exhibition at the Getty back in 2016, that it was one of the most popular exhibitions ever. So that sort of proved the point that you don't need to show authentic objects in a museum.
Okay, just very briefly, I think it was very important for me to be at Dunhuang for residency, particularly the first time in 2017. And it was great to be staying so close to the Mogao grottos, you know, right at the spot. When each morning, when I walked toward the grottos, I would pass Dao Shi Ta, you know, the pagoda for Wang Yuanlu, who discovered the cave, who was also, you know, responsible for the loss of all these national treasures. Also, you know, at night, you know, like I said in the show, to look out of my window and into these grottos, you know, everything is mental. I'm so close to history. I'm sort of, you know, not directly witnessing, but, you know, close enough to imagine. So that gave me a great start. And later on, and I have to say that a lot of scrolls that I was inspired by, I did not see them. Only until much later, after I finished the project, had the opportunity to present it at the British Library, then I had a chance to see the Dunhuang star chart, and then see my piece, you know, next to this 8th, 9th century scrolls. It was such a lifetime experience. I have to mention that. Thank you.
I would like to have a question to Professor Mead and Professor Liu. We are trying to reach the stillness or calmness. Whether or not the music, or what kind of music, really disturbing our stillness, or is a benefit to reach the state of stillness and calmness. Yeah.
So I think in my experience with the Buddhist texts that I have been reading, one of the underlying principle for why Buddhism regulated the use of music and all other kinds of performing arts in the way that they did is they wanted to minimize or prevent any kind of disturbance as much as possible. And so for this reason, many forms of vocal music was actually, in the traditional Buddhist monastic context, they were prohibited from being used. But that being said, even though there was a clear rule in the Vinaya that says the use of instrumental music is not allowed, but if you go to any Tibetan monastery, or there is also one Chinese Buddhist monastery in Beijing, Zhihuasi, there are monastic orchestra band. So again, one of the things that has been fascinating for me is to look at, the delinquency or the differences between what Buddhist text told us to do and what we are actually doing on the ground. And my personal opinion is that all kinds of rules and regulations, they are tools. They are upaya. As long as you can reach the goal, I personally think, the more innovative you are, the better.
Thank you. In a very simple sense, I think of rhythm, harmony, and melody as the main elements of music, and think of rhythm as the body, the thing that moves the body, which is what we respond to. Harmony, let's say, which is the emotions, and melody, that is the mind.
And so if we are using these elements with some awareness of neuroscience, of how we're responding to them, what we think of as entrainment, pulling along of the mind-body, then if we use rhythm and we begin steady and then we dissolve rhythm, it would calm the body. If we're using harmony in a way that is balancing, it's the perfect fifths that I showed you. If not, I didn't show you those. The seconds that are grating upon our system and that would create anxiety. And then with the melody, having, as soon as there's melody, we're activating sort of the alpha, we're following, we're predicting. And when that softens, then when that disappears, then we're only sort of in a suspended state.
Allow me to respond is that our conscience is constantly shining, unrest and moving, right? Like a wave, above the ocean, but we don't want to dip down the ocean to see the calmness. So those kind of music is just like a wing, balance the wave and make the wave become the constant, certain rhythm, so that by that balance, that our mind can really dip into the ocean and to reach the calmness. Well, yeah. Thank you.
What Director Mead said at the almost beginning of your talk, the mind is not easily seduced by silence. I just couldn't agree more. My mind just never seduced by silence. So thank you for the question, and thank you for the answers. I think we can have one more question. Thank you very much for your speech, and thank you for the attention and questions. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for our speakers and moderator as well. That was really interesting. And so we're slightly delayed on time. So right now we'll have a 5-minute break, just a toilet break, and we'll come back for the closing. And I would also like to invite all of you to the front so we can take a group photo. And we also have the former Deputy CEO of Tzu Northeast Region, Vic Liang, to present some of this. Okay, so everyone, welcome back again. Okay, so welcome back for the very last time. Thank you very much. I know everyone is very enthusiastic and has a lot to talk about, and we're almost there. So as we bring this year's Tzu Chi Global Symposium for Common Goodness to a close, concluding our exploration of applied Buddhism and the contemporary Bodhisattva Path, let's take a moment to reflect on the journey of the past 3 days. We begin by exploring the philosophical foundations of the Bodhisattva Path. We moved into witnessing how those philosophies are lived out through global humanitarianism and ethical care. And today we look to the future, imagining how design, ecology, and technology can help us build a more compassionate world. Before we officially conclude, it is my great privilege to invite a few of our distinguished representatives to share their final reflections on our time together. So first, we'd like to welcome Professor Deng Wei-ren from Dharma Drum Institute of Liberal Arts to say a few words.
Did I win the lottery? Friends, as we come to the close of these days, allow me to offer not a summary, but a small reflection. The program has been too rich and the voice too many for any single account to do it justice. So instead, let me simply register my gratitude for the richness, for the diversity, and for the gift of learning, not only from colleagues in our own field, but from those who, from those whose disciplines and ways of seeing are very different from ours. I'll be honest with you, in time, I'll probably forget the precise philosophical arguments about Buddhist equality, Tathagata Karma, or Vijnapti Madhurta. The technical details always fade. But what will stay with me and stay vividly for a very long time are colors, the sounds and feelings, the colors of the faces of, not the faces of scholars, the colors of the exhibition, the texture of posters, the cadence of voice in many accents, the faces of scholars and volunteers, the conversations over meals, the quiet attention in our lecture halls. This will linger long after the footnotes have receded. I want to say something a little more particular. I have loved the melody of our conversations, and I loved it not in spite of, but because of our disagreements. There's a kind of harmony, I would call it unharmonious harmony, 一种不和谐的和谐. To put it musically, a plain major chord is pleasant and resolved, but a major seventh chord, with that one note sitting just a little outside the triad, has a depth, a lingering quality, and aftertaste that simple chord does not. Our disagreements have been, I think, that seventh note. They have given our common conversations its 情意盎然的回味, its lingering resonance. And perhaps this is the dharmata, the abiding nature that flows beneath every application of the dharma. Not uniformity, but a depth that holds difference within itself. If applied Buddhism has a true spirit, I suspect it is something like this. In Buddhist tradition, when so much punya, so much merit has been earned through the kindness of so many, our practice is not to keep it, but to share it as gratitude and as blessing for what we care about and for what needs our care. So allow me in closing to offer the verse of the tradition has long used for this purpose. Bear with me, the artist and musician in the room. Akasatha chapummata deva naga mahitika punyang tang arumoditva chirang rakantu sasanam. May the devas of the sky and of the earth have rejoiced in this merit. Long protect the Dharma, and long protect all whom we love, and all who would need our care. Thank you to the Tzu Chi Foundation and Harvard CAMLab, to every speaker, every volunteer, to each of you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you so much, Professor Deng, for that very beautiful presentation and singing. And next we invite Professor Justin Risinger from University of Miami.
So, in the Lotus Sutra, the teachings of the Buddha are famously compared to Dharma rain that falls down upon great trees, small shrubs, and even little grasses equally, and each of them drink of it as they are able. This has been a great Dharma downpour, and I am very grateful to Dr. He for giving this xiao yao cao, right, this little herb, a chance to share something of what he has gotten from it. So I want to begin with the question of applied Buddhism, right? There was a question on our first day, isn't all Buddhism ultimately applied? And in one sense, of course, that's true. That is the nature of religion. But I think when we talk about it in the context of Tzu Chi, we mean something more particular. In Pei-Ying Lauscher's discussion yesterday, she talked about the threshold of modernity, the multiple modernity theory of Eisenstadt. According to this theory, society crosses the threshold of modernity when it becomes self-reflexive, when the old divinely ordained order is no longer accepted, and instead society becomes its own project, right? So human realm Buddhism is modern because it has that goal of a pure land on earth, right? The belief that by understanding the processes according to Dharma and according to science, we can intervene in them. I think Dr. Gold's presentation on the first day was an excellent example of that. And specifically in human realm Buddhism, there's a notion that the way that you do this is by focusing on this time, this place, these people, right? 此时, 此地, 此人. And if you will forgive absolutely horrific immodesty, I want to add 此身, right? Because I think what is necessary to use Buddhism, to apply Buddhism to transform the world is not simply, or that ideas are necessary, but a not sufficient condition, right? Transformation has to address our embodied nature, right? And the human body is a feeling body. Feeling precedes consciousness. Pain, hunger, and pleasure precede thinking. This is true evolutionarily, right? This is one of the reasons that some philosophers and cognitive scientists think that AI cannot be conscious because it does not have a body, it does not feel. This is also true psychologically, and many of us know this from meditation. Feeling and the response to feeling precedes the thought that expresses, interprets, labels it. And the human body is a social body. We don't do that well on our own, in isolation, as we all experienced during the pandemic and have continued to experience in its aftermath. We need other people, right? With apologies to Mayfair Young and Elise DeVito, as Confucius said, I cannot flock with birds and beasts. I have to, if I do not flock, or if I do not associate with people, who will I associate with? 无非是人之徒语，而谁与? What makes Tzu Chi successful is not simply its ideas or even its logistical sophistication, as impressive as those are, but its ability to evoke feeling that inspires action through embodied practices. I think Julia Huang's work on the musical corporeality and weeping practices in Tzu Chi are really informative and illuminating here. I also think of Dr. He's observation, I think it was yesterday, about how when he's actively working in Tzu Chi, he feels like a bodhisattva, and then when he goes home, that feeling kind of fades. I think part of that is that Tzu Chi acts as the kind of bodhisattva collective that Zhang Laoshi imagined yesterday, right? And it exists as this bodhisattva collective because it's embodied in a choreographed collectivity. So I think that the question of the future of Buddhism is one of form and function. I think in some ways the task is similar to the one that was posed to the designers that Dr. Wang spoke about this morning. We have to create forms that are indelible, arresting, and affecting, but also fully at home in their social environments. We need a middle way that neither clings to the forms of the past nor simply apes the present order that is frankly breaking down. Right, forms that are inspired instead by the fundamental functions of body and mind, those that were identified by the Buddha 2,500 years ago, but also modern and traditional psychology, art, music, and design. Image, symbol, and sound reach us at the level of feeling, laying the ground for new forms of action and thought. We saw a number of historical examples over the course of our 3 days. I think CAMLab's kind of monumental digital art points to another way to evoke these kind of feelings, as does Dr. Mead's work with immersive sound. And I think that this is something that Tzu Chi has historically done phenomenally well. But Tzu Chi is also very much a product of a particular set of historical and social conditions. We live in times of uncertainty, breakdown, and rapid change. And Tzu Chi will have to negotiate those processes of change and revision. And that's going to mean letting go of some forms while inventing new ones, remaining in authentic dialogue with Tzu Chi and the Buddhist traditions, as Wei Ren Laoshi talked about yesterday, but still recreating Zheng Yan's vision for a new era so that her commitment to the contemporary Bodhisattva path continues to be applied by future generations. I think that the self-reflexive and interdisciplinary character of the symposium embodies Tzu Chi's commitment to do just that, and I'm very grateful to have been a part of it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Professor Risinger. And next, we'd like to invite Professor Elise Ann DeVito from Tzu Chi University to say a few words.
Well, hello everyone, and my name is Elise Ann DeVito. I got my PhD at Harvard in history in East Asian languages, nothing to do with Buddhism whatsoever, until I went to Taiwan. And then I realized Taiwan, although the size of Holland, or perhaps some people say Jamaica, there's so many religions, Buddhism is thriving, and I learned about Tzu Chi, and that's actually my first book is about Taiwan's Buddhist nuns. So I just basically changed my field from Qing Dynasty history to modern Buddhism in China, Taiwan, and Vietnam too. So I'm so lucky to be at Tzu Chi University, the Institute of Religion and Humanities. I can firsthand every day being surrounded by Tzu Chi humanities and culture. And I know that we've all learned so much during this symposium. I have to hold it up. Our own 3-day journey to enlightenment. I don't dare say that I am anywhere near enlightenment, but I've been energized and inspired by all your presentations. I have found newfound hope for the future. We learned the myriad of ways that Tzu Chi leads us on the Bodhisattva Path, both continuing long traditions of compassion and mindfulness in Buddhism, but also, of course, reinterpreting Buddhist teachings for the 21st century. But the particular genius of this symposium is to include presentations by artists and designers. And I feel that the CAMLab's Journey to Enlightenment exhibition and also today's presentations conveyed many insights that we should take to heart. Professor Eugene Wang this morning said something like, the future to us here in the 21st century looks much different than it did to the people in the 20th century. We have to remember that we're now in the 21st century. Buddhist, as I said before, Tai Shu's essay, Creating the Pure Land in the Human Realm, it's already 100 years old. 1926. So, but I think as we look to the future over these 3 days, there are two insights in particular that resonate deeply with me. I think with you too. The first one is, as Professor Auger said, there are worlds around us not centered on human needs. Much as that we must relieve suffering, there's so much suffering left in the human world. But there are also worlds that are not centered on human needs whatsoever. And as Donna Haraway wrote, we have never been human alone. We have never been human alone. We need to see, respect, be with plants, animals, the microscopic rocks, mountains, water, ecosystems, with life, with death, across time and space, all in contrapuntal patterns of cause and effect. And there are many tools in the Buddhist traditions to do this. And second, the Bodhisattva Path is to relieve suffering, whether physical, mental, spiritual. But don't forget to not only use our so-called rational mind, but we should use all our senses, sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. Remember this morning we saw the tiny human foot with all the smells around it. And realize that creation of art and objects, both impossible and possible. All the structures, all the infrastructures are not only for beauty, but also hope. And this world needs this more than ever. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor DeVito. And next, we have two very special people who helped make these past 3 days possible. So first, I'd like to invite Professor Eugene Wang to make his closing remarks.
What an amazing 3 days. And I think it confirmed an enduring metaphor that Chen Lu has already introduced, which is that Indra's net. Indra's net is essentially a cosmos consisting of different entities. Each is like a crystal ball reflecting all the surrounding crystal balls. So you are in me, I am in all of you. So these 3 days, in fact, kind of played out this core scenario where we come from different disciplines, different cultural background, different communities, and we converge here and not knowing whether we can truly carry out some kind of conversation. There might be still disciplinary gaps to be bridged, but overall I think there is that moment, or at least moments, lasting moments, where we feel like we're reflected in others, others are in ourselves. I clearly have that notion when somehow I feel I can project into other fields and figuring or imagining myself playing a role in the field of design, for instance, in the field of social history, institutional history, in the fields of music, and even though I'm not trained to be that field, but you somehow could kind of project into that universe, and in that there's that moment of the thrill of discovery, thrill of shared sensibility, and so forth. So to make that really concrete, I would say just listening to Xiaozi's presentation, talking about his experience in Dunhuang, that actually reminded me of my own experience when I was a student. That was, I think, in the 1990s, I actually, as a student, I actually stayed in Dunhuang for more than a month or so. And there was that one experience, it was once in a lifetime experience, because when you get to the late of the day, all the tourists left Dunhuang, and they bust off into the town, so you're left with essentially this empty place, and only the staff members who live in the staff residence are allowed to sort of roam around a bit. So I had that experience, and Xiaozi had that photo, and that photo looks so familiar to me because you could actually climb onto the plateau of the Dunhuang Cave, away from Dunhuang Cave, And it was vast universe, or the first time you feel like you are just alone in the universe. It gives you that kind of sensation. And you also feel the silence. Speaking of the musicians talking about silence. And you feel like, okay, this is really me and universe together. But more importantly, you feel that experience of what the concept today, number of speakers brought up is the onfa, is kind of Norwegian concept. Essentially, you and the environment, and is some kind of ecological togetherness. So I felt that in a hard way or in the most immediate way, because there's absolute silence. And then you hear somehow all these larger insects like flies. I don't know where they come from. I mean, they come from nowhere. They kind of just hover and hum around you. And I've never experienced anything like that. You feel like you are some kind of center of a little universe, and all these little insects are orbit around you. Because in a way, this thought was also kind of triggered by the presentation by Hua Yan and Yuhan talking about their little insect cosmology. So it's kind of annoying because you want to be really experience the vastness of that distance, like the tree lands having the hand over the ear, trying to reach the other. So you want to experience the silence, but then these humming insects just bug you. And so you say, well, okay, how do I get rid of them? They're kind of all circling around you. Then I say, okay, what if I run? And they run. So they run with you. And you stop, and then they stop. It is at that moment I understand the issue brought up today, which is we need to shift perspective. Because you need to think about how they think, right? And then you understand why they need what they need, because you are the only source of water in this arid land. And for them to survive, you are the only source of life. So, I mean, you know, it is that experience and that sense of how do you live with other species? How do you imagine how other people think, how other species think? That in the end matters more. And that is also sort of Indra's net experience for me. And so much of yesterday's and the day before yesterday, I also feel like I'm reliving that moment, because essentially there are some of the disciplines where you only sort of peep into the black hole. You imagine what they do. You also try to imagine what's the sort of line of thinking, drive them inventing what they want to invent and talk what they want to talk. So ultimately, I want to thank Tzu Chi Foundation that made it possible for us to have occasion like this, where we truly could live in this kind of, at once a universe and multiverse. And that and the minds and the mirrors, the crystal balls, they can all kind of hand together fleetingly or lastingly. We don't know, but at the end of the day, I like what Professor Ten just mentioned earlier, that maybe in the end it's just a frequency to which we vibrate all together that matters more, and all the other technical details will fade away. So in the end, yes, I want to leave with that note, and I want to again thank Tzu Chi Foundation, and congratulations on the 60th anniversary of this extraordinary organization and a global enterprise that is constantly make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Wang. And finally, please welcome Dr. Rayson He to conclude this symposium.
Thank you all, especially Professor Eugene Wang and the team of CAMLab, and also, of course, the Tzu Chi United States, and all the my brother, sister, and also all the volunteers and the colleague of Tzu Chi Foundation for the literature and our history department. They flew away from Taiwan and spent almost 2 weeks here, and thank you. And as Professor Wang just said, that the bug really disturbing us, right? But this is the sacred world we face, by receiving, accepting, inviting them to join us. We'll be able to manage that, manage the coexistence, manage our mind can be also peacefully and harmony to live all these secular beings. So this is, we talk about the Applied Buddhism. I remember in 2002 when I started joining Tzu Chi as a full-time devotee, to quit my job as TV anchor and producer. And yeah, that's the age of 40. And 2006, 4 years later, there was a time that the master make morning lectures on the sutra. And when I listened to her sutra, and I walk out with her, and she say, "You all my disciple, mainly devote to sensual being, but not yet devote to Buddhism." I was shocked in that term. So I know we do a lot of charity work, but we are all for sensual beings' well-being and to try to solve the poverty, the illness, etc. But we never think about how can we do for the Buddhism. So since then, it lasts about 10 years. Every morning I wake up about 4 and enter the Jingsi abode to listen to master's lecture at 4:30. We're chanting, we meditation, and then listen to her talk until 6 in the morning. So about 10 years from 2006 to 2016. Before I went to Cambridge and Oxford and here Harvard to be a fellow. So for Buddhism and for sensual being is utmost goal for Master Zheng Yan and for Tzu Chi Foundation. And it's all about how the Buddhist philosophy, wisdom, and compassion can really apply to the secular world. From the Master Zheng Yan's term, Buddhist Dharma have to apply to daily life. And Bodhisattva have to really participate in the secular world. She said, 佛法生活化，菩萨人间化. Apply Buddhist Dharma to daily life and bring Bodhisattva to the secular world. So this theme, I am very honored and happy that Professor Wang would like to co-organize this Applied Buddhism, because Buddhism is not only for human reign. So we say humanist Buddhism is good, but Buddhism is not only for human reign. Buddhism is for all different kind of 6 realms. We make a joke, include the cyber realm, right? AI eventually is the very important partner we have to live with. So Buddhism is for every sensual being, every realm of the world. So I think Applied Buddhism is broader and better to interpret how can Buddhism benefit the sensual being. If there's not, Buddhism will not benefit the sensual being. Why Buddhists have to exist? So because for sensual beings, so that can we for Buddhism. So, but Master Zheng Yan's the 3 ultimate wish is that purify human mind and may the society free from disaster, and may the whole world live in harmony. These 3 ultimate goals, but how to reach that ultimate shore? So we need to create a model. We need the knowledge. That idea is very, audible, but we need tool, we need ladder to step by step to go that shore, that awakening shore, the ideal shore. So that's why we need scholars. We need all of you to provide your talent, your research, and your wisdom, your compassion to design a different model for societal governance, for economy, for communication, for art, for education, for medicine. That's called Applied Buddhism. Apply Buddhist wisdom and compassion to every field of professionalism. So that's the goal we try to do. So the first day, we talk about Applied Buddhism. The second day is the model of Applied Buddhism, which is Master Cheng Yen's 60 years devotion to the essential being. So that second day is Master Cheng Yen's philosophy and practices. So we had a model of practice. But this day, we have another angle, not only concept. Enlightenment is not only conceptual enlightenment, but as well as essential sentiment enlightenment. So today we see so many artists and so many professors working in the art. We feel full of essentially bliss, sentiment transcendence, eventually spiritual enlightenment. So the concept and sentiment both important for individual enlightenment. If someone says, I want to reach enlightenment, philosophy is not enough, so that we need spirituality. You can see a lot of philosophers, they have a lot of trouble. They have like an infliction, they have a lot of suffering, they have a lot of trouble and worry, because their sentiment has not yet awakening. So the religion, the Buddhism, talk about how we ignite people's sentiment, how we transcend their sentiment. So is art. So we see so many artists today, their presentation bring a lot of happiness to us. And the happiness also reach the calmness. As I talked to Professor Matt, the music or the art, just like a wing, they harmonize the wave. So the wave eventually found out that there is stronger strength beneath the wave. That's the ocean, vast ocean. So they can find out deeply the inside balance and inside calmness. As I share with Dr. Professor Kim, through compassionate actions, we can reach the calmness. Through the meaningful action, we reach the stillness. We are not seeking stillness through stillness. We're not thinking calmness through calmness, like a bug. By accepting them, inviting them to join us, reach the balance. That's the wisdom, and that's the so-called individual enlightenment. But individual enlightenment is not enough. We need the society. We need holistic, collective enlightenment. So that we need more wisdom. We need more model. We need more philosophical design, thinking, and also methodology to reach that awakening shore collectively, holistic. So in the past 1,000 years, Buddhism seeking for more individual enlightenment instead of collective and holistic enlightenment. So we say, may the world live in harmony. May the society free from disasters. So we need more wisdom. We are just at the very beginning, as I say. Tzu Chi been dealing with charity, medicine, education, cultural, environment, and now we expand to economy, governance, technology for good, and etc. So we are living in a world, not only spiritually, but also physically. So although our spirit is very, very kind of still, but if the physical world disturbing you, you know where to be really reach the calmness. So spirituality as well as important the physicality. So physicality is also important than we seeking the spirituality. So this physical world and the spiritual world have to be balanced. So that we create what kind of physical world is better for us to reach the spiritual enlightenment. Thus Eugene Wang proposed design the future. What is the future about? Is better or the worse? We design the future like we have expertise from landscape, from the architecture, try to make a good environment, physical environment for us to reach the well-being, not only living well-being, but spiritual well-being as well. So without physical condition, there's no way for us to reach that kind of spirituality. Spirituality cannot exist alone. Only through the environment, better physical world, so that we can balance between the physical world and spiritual world. So we talk about the future of Buddhism. What is Buddhism look like? Not only what does Buddhism look like, but what the world should look like. When I was a visiting fellow at John Kennedy School, I often went to law school to listen to a lecture of Professor Roberto Unger. Probably some of them know him well. He's, I think, 75, still very vocal, very strong philosophical thinking. He said in the late 19th century, those philosophers have a strong and comprehensive blueprint of how humans should live. But in the late 20th century, all the scholar philosophers talking about some very specific issues. We lost the whole full blueprint. We don't have any vision of how human beings should live. So now here we come to a moment, in such a chaotic moment, uncertain moment, turbulent moment. It's us as a scholar. It's here at Harvard. It's here we all gather different expertise and different compassion and talent together to think about what is human beings should live with, what the world should come by, what kind of world we are going to pursue. So we are going to design the future blueprint of humankind. And that's the core compassion and goal of Buddhism. So when Buddhism is not for Buddhism alone, but to produce and create a better world that we can live by, individually and holistically. And thank you for all the my distinguished guests to join this 3 days event. I think this is a very abundant experiences. We have another concert waiting for us tonight. Hopefully you can all enjoy it. Thank you all. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. He, and to all of our speakers for those beautiful and inspiring reflections. This shared journey of understanding, embodiment, and future exploration does not end here. It continues in how we think, act, and shape the world around us. Thank you, everyone, for your presence and your shared dedication to the Bodhisattva Path of common goodness. So before we leave, we want to take another group photo. So everyone, please, for those who are still standing, please find a seat. And we will have our photographer come to the front to take the photo.